Apex a bit soon. Stay up. That's it. Out we go. In. Apex as well. Oh, we missed the apex there. Let's go out. Right out the cockpit. Latch out in fourth gear. Third gear. Fourth down. 35 down. Well, welcome to another episode of repairs to this poor old Mark 1 2500 Triumph. Now, if you saw the last episode of this, you would have seen that this car has a problem of pushing oil out through into the catch tank and the oil filler. I was absolutely convinced and thought it was wasting my time doing a leak down test and a compression test, but I did it anyway, and it proved to be, well, very interesting. A leak down test, which I always found to be pretty good things, showed everything to be good, and the compression test had everything 145 to 165, I think it was, PSI in all cylinders. Well, for these engines, normally they're around 140 or so, so to have 6 of them in the 155, 65 area, I think it was anyway, it was around that. It's just, it's starting to make no sense. So I seeked some advice from fellow Triumph owners, and I don't believe what I'm about to do is really the problem, but I figure it's worth trying. It's not going to cost very much or take up very much time. So the first thing, this thing's got an aluminium tapper cover on it. Now the original ones are like a pressed steel thing, and the hose in this case goes off to the catch tank that allows the engine to breathe. On an original one, there's like a baffle over the hole and some gauze in there or sort of thing. Well, on these aluminium ones there's nothing. The hole just pokes through into where the sort of rocker gear is. So it's been suggested to me that I should baffle that, and that's no big deal, so I will pull it off and do that. Now the other thing is that on these cars there's a modification that a lot of people do, and this was already done to this engine when we got it. We got it as a second-hand engine, and there's a pipe that runs from down near where the oil pressure thingy is up and goes into the back of the head. It's a little modification, you see them advertised. It just pumps more oil up into the rocker gear. Now, it's been suggested to me that this is putting too much oil up there, given that the rocker gear may be very worn. Now, if the rocker gear is very worn, maybe that too much oil means there's an awful lot more oil in the rocker gear tappet area than normal, and therefore it's getting sloshed and generally, and maybe even the heat is generating a bit of pressure, and it's ending up coming out, given the amount of oil involved. I don't know. Look, it's not going to take much, so let's do it. And if it doesn't work, well, we haven't lost much, and it's certainly a lot easier than pulling the motor out and rebuilding it, and a lot cheaper. So let's get on with it. Now the first thing will be to get the strut brace off. So let's get on with that. Alrighty then, that is the strut brace done. and off. The next problem is there's some heater hoses in the way, so let's get them off. Now I can hear you asking, why did no coolant come out of those hoses? Well, that's because they're blanked off. The heater long since died, and I'm not pulling the dash out for something I never use. But some registration people get a bit nancy about heaters not working, so the hoses are on there. Looks like everything works and is connected when it's not. Alrighty then. First other thing I should say is it's a windy day today, so the audio might be a bit dodgy, and the parrots have come to eat off this tree that's near here, and they make a lot of noise, as does other background noises, so sorry about that, Chief. Alright, next thing to get off is the bonnet catch sort of thingy, cable. Just to get it out of the way. And also the hose that goes to the catch tank. Now, as you can see, the hole. You can see the hole just there, feeding to the. That's going to be harder to baffle than I thought it would be, but there you go. Alrighty then, I've just taken the tapper cover over to the welder to weld a baffle in it. So he'll have that for probably a couple of days, I hope. It'll turn into a long thing like it has with the dolly. But he did say he'd try and do it. So the next job is to clean up the old cork gasket and silicone that's left on the top of the head. I also need to remove the catch tank and give that a good clean up. Get everything out of it, make sure it's breathing correctly. And that will also tell me next time I drive it whether any of this is working. Then I'll have to give some thought to how to restrict that extra oil feed hose, and also I'll be winding the engine over and checking the rocker gear for being worn out. So let's get on with it. Cleaned up the catch tank, and I've cleaned up this surface that the tapper cover gasket goes on. So what came out of the catch tank is somewhat interesting. I don't know what it is. It's very runny, and in the bottom of it was something like greasy, very thick, greasy sort of stuff. Not like coolant. There's no drop in the coolant level. It's not that milky sort of blown head gaskety stuff. It doesn't smell like petrol, but it has the consistency of petrol, so that's what it looks like. So not quite sure what to make of that. It's a lot of it too. I think that's maybe 2 litres catch tank, and it was full, I'd say. So onward to the next job, which is to I'll take the plugs out so I can turn the engine over easily, and then turn it over and wiggle the rockers to see what sort of wear we have in the rockers. So let's get on with that job. Well, I don't think I have to test them all. Yeah, I don't think I have to test them all. There's a fair bit of wiggle in the ones that I am wiggling. And going by the other one I have, doesn't have anywhere near the wiggle. So I'm thinking that this shaft is worn, and it doesn't hurt to swap it out for the other one. So let's get on with that job. Alright, I've wound it over to top dead centre. I don't know that I had to do that, but I've done it anyway. Now, some of the valves are down and they're under load and what have you, so I need to undo these bolts a little bit at a time from the middle, working out like you would a head, just to take some of the load off some of these areas. Now, that's the rocker gear. Now let's check this rocker gear. These aren't perhaps as bad as, there's a bit of wobble, there's a bit of wobble, there's a bit of wobble, there's a bit of wobble. Alrighty, let's put this on. Well, I'll just tighten these down a little bit. Alright, once they're torqued down, I can then do the tappets. I then have to puzzle on how I'm going to sort of restrict that pipe that comes up that feeds extra oil to the rockers. It's got what I believe is called a banjo fitting. I can't be sure of that, but I think that's what they call them. You don't come across them on Triumphs much, well, at all, unless it's aftermarket stuff. It's like my Toyota's got them on the brakes. It's like a round thing with a bolt between it and two copper washers either side. Now I can't quite visualise how I'm going to restrict that down. I'll have to undo it and contemplate on that one. But for now, let's go and find the torque settings. There you go. Alrighty then, the tension here is 25 foot-pounds. So let's do this. Alright, time to adjust the tappets. Now there's a whole sequence to this, and need a feeler gauge. It's 10 thou is the gap. And for some reason these feeler gauges don't have 10 thou, so I've had to use 6 and 4 inches down. And when number 1 and 3 valves are fully open, I have to test 10 and 12. So let's just wind this over to 1 and 3, fully open. Alright, plugs 1 and 3 fully open. Need to do 10 and 12. Just 10 and 12. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Which needs an awful lot of adjustment. Well, that's those two done. Now it's just a matter of doing them all, and so I'll do that now. Well, that's all the tappets done. I'll probably check them again before I do it again, just to make sure they're alright. Now the welder's going to have the tappet cover for a few days, so it's not a lot more other than that hose. This hose is this one here, comes up here and up into the head just there. So I have to think about what to do about that hose, and so it might be a few days before I can probably fire it up once I've done that, and just see it. You know, can't run it too long, the oil will start running everywhere, but it'll certainly give me an idea of, make sure everything's getting oiled and working up the top end, and then I'll have to wait for the tappet cover to come back. Now the other thing I've got, instead of a cork gasket, I've got a modern, some sort of plasticky sort of gasket, like modern cars have, whatever that's made of. So I'll be siliconing that to the tappet cover, but not to the head. So I might, yeah, that might be reusable a few times before you have to replace it, unlike the cork ones, which ultimately, especially when you silicone both sides. So anyway, let's see what happens when down with that pipe. Well, the plugs are still out. I've rechecked the tappets, and one or two needed a slight adjustment, but I'm happy with the tappets. So I'm just going to turn it over without the plugs and get some oil pressure up. Alright, oil pressure light's gone out, so far so good. I'll now put the plugs in, and then we'll see if it'll go without the tappet cover on, which means it can't run long or the oil will start running everywhere. Alrighty, plugs are in, leads are on. Let's turn the key and see what happens. Well, that all seems pretty good actually. Everything's oiling. There's certainly no gush of oil up here. Now I haven't done that hose, that additional oil feed hose, basically I can't work out how to restrict it, and to pull it off altogether requires the original plugs that plug up the holes, and I don't have them. And I give it some thought, and I think all that's doing is getting oil to the top quicker, not so much more. because the holes down that rocker shaft are minuscule, tiny hole. So in terms of volume, I don't see how that's going to give it more. The only scenario being if the rocker shaft was worn, that would mean more oil could come out, and that may be what's happening with the old rocker shaft. So I haven't done that, and that's about as far as I can go now till I get the tapper cover back from the welder. And if you've been watching my channel, you'll probably be aware that sometimes the welder can take some time. I told him I didn't have the time this time, and this car needs to be kept going. It's not like the Dolly and the 7 that can wait. This one needs to be going. In theory it should be going by Saturday, because I need, or this coming weekend. There's a car club event on, so he did say he'd get it back to me by tomorrow. So for now, that's about it, but I'll be back in a few seconds with the tapper cover by the magic of video. Alrighty then, I've got the tapper cover back. It's got a baffle welded in there, which should help. It'll still allow the engine to breathe, but the hole that goes off to the catch tank is now sort of not sort of straight into the sort of access to the oil in a very direct way. I've also got this whiz bang all singing all dancing, whatever it is, modern plasticky tapper cover gasket, which will replace the oil one. This will be siliconed to the tapper cover, and then hopefully it'll be reusable now and then, for a while anyway. So let's get on with that and see what happens. Alrighty then, let's get this tapper cover on. As I've said many times, I'm not a big fan of silicone, but it seems to work. So, but what I've been doing with silicone is sort of putting it on and then doing things up, but not to the sort of tightness I would have done them up to if there had been no silicone. Just doing them up till the silicone oozes a bit, and then I come back a bit later and put the silicone, tighten it up a bit tighter. Okay. Well, that's the car back together. Now I need that silicone to go off. I don't want to start the engine and while the silicone hasn't gone off, so through the magic of video again, the next bit will be the next day and you'll see, and we'll take it for a run around the block and see whether all this has worked. Like I said before, I really don't think any of this is going to do anything. I forgot to video the baffle close up for you to have a look at. Sorry about that, Chief. So anyway, see you in a second. Well, let's take this old Triumph around the block a few times. I don't think it'll be enough to show the oil leak up, but nevertheless I want to make sure after changing the rockers that everything is actually working the way it should. here in New South Wales, Australia, we have a registration system that is all over the place, and it's this car's registered as a historic car. I'm only allowed to drive it for 60 days a year, and you've got a logbook to fill in. If you don't fill the logbook in and you then get pulled over by the police, they'll do you for driving an unregistered vehicle. So you need to fill it in now. I'm driving around the block here. There is a little bit of leeway for testing purposes, and that's what I'm doing right now. I'm just driving literally around the block just to make sure the car's working properly. All seems good so far. We'll go around the block a couple of times to just make sure. Now, because my Toyota's been out of action, I've used this car quite a bit, and therefore it's only got 17 days left on its rego, and I'm a long way from renewal time, so I basically need to stop driving this car. I am driving the Toyota at the moment. I don't trust it, mind you, but I am driving it. So now, considering if I do decide to pull the motor out, this car will be off the road for a bit of time, so that will help. Anyway, the old beastie seems to be going all right. Still cold. These old cars take a bit of warming up. They're wonderful old things, these old cars, you know. They're, what would I, to use politically incorrect terminology, they're a man's car. Everything's heavy, steering's heavy, brakes take a bit of pushing, gear changes are all heavy. Having just driven the Toyota this morning, it's sort of, you come back to this thing and it's, but having said that, the heavy actually is part of the feel. You know, you got feel with this car that sort of modern cars can be a bit wishy-washy. You know, you're not sure, you know, what gear you're in. Or, there's no not knowing with this car. It gives you a lot of feedback. I actually really love driving this car. Not so much in heavy traffic, but certainly in on a backcountry road. It is just wonderful. Now, this is a manual gearbox car. I don't own automatic cars and never will. And I know some people think, oh yeah, they're great in traffic, whatever. Well, not this little brown duck. Well, revs out all right, going all right. Well, as you expect, under here everything's completely clean. Catch tank's clean, tappet cover's clean. It's not leaking out the tappet cover gasket. But we only travelled 3Ks, 3.5 Ks going around the block. It's going to need a longer trip to work out whether any of that worked. Yeah, well, we'll find out. Anyway, that's about the end of this video. Tune in, same duck time, same duck channel, for more mechanical mayhem on this poor old Mark 1. Bye for now. Alrighty, the torque is 25 foot-pounds. Help if I could see it.